Good afternoon. Welcome to Connect. I'm your host, Pastor Kevin McGill, the Victory Temple Church of God in Christ. You're listening to us on IntellectualRadio.com. You can also listen to us on iHeartRadio. Connections is a show designed to keep you connected and network to those in the Christian community who are making impacts and strides. So get ready because your connection is established. And if you wish to become a Connections advertiser, please reach out to me at bishop1915@gmail.com, or you can inbox me on Facebook. Nature Sunshine, have you set weight loss goal for 2020 and you haven't started keeping them yet? Would you like a natural approach to weight loss? Do you want to see and feel changes immediately? Do you take medication for high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma, fibromyalgia, cancer, arthritis, or any other condition in your body? Do you have poor circulation, frequent colds, flu, or chronic fatigue, or perhaps you just want to maintain a healthy body? Give Nature Sunshine a try. They have many products and plans that will assist you in losing weight or maintaining and improving your health the natural way. You can reach out to them at 708-302-5655. The Bedrock Movement affirms safety, comfort, dignity, awareness, and empowerment to Chicagoland street homeless. For any internship needs for school, community services that are mandated by the court, or you just want to volunteer assisting the street homeless, please call John Netherly at 773-567-1110. And today we have in our studio this wonderful friend of mine from way back when. We're going to talk about child advocacy, and she is an expert in her field. But in this day and time where children are increasingly becoming the victims of so many different things across the board, we often wonder, is there a voice? And so we're going to talk about what child advocacy is, what her role is as it plays into that, and then maybe suggest some ideas on how we can help to add a voice to those that don't seem to have a voice. And so her name is the one and only, she's been here before, the one and only Rhonda Hawkins-Lyke. And she is a friend of mine. Listen, we go way back. Whitney Young, you know, I always bring the Whitney Youngers on the show. Class of 1986. The second best class.
Oh my God. Okay. We're going through that again.
The second best class. But we just thank God for all of you that's watching on Facebook. Please read, you can, any comments or questions you have pertaining to the subject, you can feel free to type it into the comment section, or you can give us a call at 708-223-8953. That's 708-223-8953. If you have any questions for Rhonda, if you have any questions about the topic or any comments about the topic, you can feel free to call in, or you can type it in the comment field. And so we're just going to get right to it.
Okay.
And again, we're grateful because you are a busy woman.
Yes, I am.
You travel, you do some of everything. And so I know if I get you on this show, then we've had to really arrange some things.
Yeah, this was like the 2 weekends I had free for the next 6 months.
Oh, I feel so special. You fit me in your busy schedule.
Always.
Well, anyway, we just thank God. And let's give everybody a little history on who you are,
Okay.
how you became what you are.
Okay.
And you can go into detail.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm a product of Chicago Public Schools. I am a lawyer by training. So I have worked in the area of child welfare, child advocacy for now it's about 27 years. Okay. I did it straight out of law school. I worked for a firm for maybe under a year. And then I decided by happenstance, I always love working with kids, but I ran into, he's a circuit court judge now by the name of Robert Harris. And I ran into him at a party, and he told me about an office that he was working for, and they worked with abused and neglected children. And was I interested? And I said, of course. And that was the Office of the Public Guardian, Cook County Office of the Public Guardian. So I started working there. I worked there for about 7 years as a supervising attorney. And then I jumped over to the other side and started working for the state as an attorney and a supervising attorney. And now I am a administrative law judge for the state agency. And my role is I hear cases that involve families and sometimes providers and sometimes agencies. But my role is to afford those people who are connected to the system an opportunity to be heard if we say they've done something that they should not have
Okay.
done. Okay.
Awesome. Awesome. And so you came straight out of law school,
Yes.
going right into
I was
this.
23.
Was this something that was a passion of yours already, or was this something that you decided, I need to do something, so maybe I'll get involved in this?
Well, when I started out of law school, I worked at a firm. I worked at a really large firm. And actually, it's one of the largest firms in the world now. And I hated it. I was there probably 60, 70 hours a week. I realized it wasn't for me. The thing that a lot of people find when they go on to graduate school, especially law school, what you think you're good at, and then you start taking other classes because you're made to take those classes. You find out you're really good at those and you're really good in that area. Um, I started finding out that I was good in administrative law and juvenile law and weirdly tax law. And I started volunteering in the clinics at law school, and that helped me understand I wanted to work with people. Um, so I was on the corporate path, but I'd honestly say I was like, but God moved me to the other path because I happened to just be at that party. I wasn't going to go to that
Mm.
party that day. I was tired. I had been working, and my friend was like, let's go. And all of us who went to that party, every single African American attorney that went to that party left that firm and went over and worked with the public guardian's office.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So it was something about the public guardian's office that was attractive.
Yeah, that's one of the few. I mean, there are tons of agencies out here, but in terms of lawyers, they actually represent the children. So those lawyers go into court. They are the voice of the children in the courtroom, in the courthouse, and at staffing. So there are lots of people who work with the kids, but the kids do have a lawyer, and that's the public guardian's office. So it was really unique in that you represent corporations or businesses or adults, but being able to represent a 5-year-old, that's pretty tough because your client can't really tell you what they need. So it was definitely a tough area of law, but it was so rewarding. It was so rewarding.
Awesome. And so then you found yourself as an administrative law judge.
Several years
And
later.
so I mean, was it just doors that just opened to lead you in that path, or?
Yes and no. I mean, I was boots on the ground for a long time. So I worked directly in the courthouse. So you have people who work outside and they come into the courthouse. So my office was in the courthouse. So I was in the courthouse from 1993 till about 2001. And then I moved out into the field so I could assist agencies in providing child care and legal. And then I came back to the courthouse from 2009. So I've been in the courthouse from 2009 till now. So yeah, it was doors that opened, but I did the work to get to those doors. So
Awesome. It sounded like you were just destined to be where you are because
mhm.
the majority of your career you were stationed at the courthouse.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy what I do. Don't get me wrong. There are days I'm like, ooh. But I enjoy what I do. I enjoy working with my community, and I definitely feel I need to work with my community. This is a population that is overwhelmingly African American. The system. We've been working on this disproportionality for decades. Decades. I remember being on steering committees about the disproportionality of African American children or brown children in the child welfare system or the juvenile justice system back in the 90s. This has been an ongoing problem. So having the children having a voice that looks like them, comes out of the same community as them, it's really important.
And you mentioned that you deal with families.
Yes.
And I want to touch on what you just said about the disproportion. Is there a theory? What, in your mindset, what is the reason why it's so disproportionate?
Of course, our community has been impacted on a larger scale by things like drugs, access to mental health, access to child care. So a lot of the problems that are directly rooted in poverty have disproportionately impacted our community. Also, where we're located. So when I say disproportionality, I mean Chicago is, though the rest of the state hates that, it is the hub of the state. Springfield's our capital, but the money comes out of Chicago. And so when you're looking at a city with millions and millions of people, and then we get the calls, they're coming out of this city. And so, of course, our numbers are larger than, with the exception of East St. Louis, our numbers are larger than other counties and other municipalities. But I would say the poverty, the access to services, and the fact that we are such a large metropolitan, we're the third largest city in the nation. So that skews numbers in that favor. And then let's just face it, we have plain old racism. You have people who feel like things that happen in African American community should be watched as opposed to other communities. We get phone calls about situations where you're just like, why are you calling? Because they felt like it was abusive. They didn't take the time to talk or learn about some of our cultural norms or traditions and call and say, hey, this is abuse.
Johnny, sit down before I beat you. And then you get a call. Oh my God. We just heard a threat of abuse.
Right. Like if you get a kid who comes in and says, my mom said, like, let me give you a colloquialism I had one time. My mom said she was going to bust my head to the white meat shows.
The white meat.
And so that's not a real threat, but, for a 22-year-old fresh out of, college teacher who doesn't work in this community, they're like, what? Your mom said they're going to bust your head to the white meat shows. It may seem like a real threat. So there is some education and there needs to be some conversation about diversity, especially now we have, teachers and social workers moving out, retiring. We got the new crop coming in, and they need to understand the differences of what's, real in our community and what is just, fictive things.
And I've long said this, that teachers who are not, that doesn't look like us, they need to spend time, not necessarily in a teaching environment with us, but they need to be taught. They need to be in an education setting where they can be taught about who we are. Like, this prepares you for this job.
Right.
And this is one of the prerequisites. You have to spend a quarter in the midst of Black America. And to know the phrases, I know this sounds kind of funny, but when you think about it, because like you said, and that's not just even in the education system, it's even social interaction on any level, corporate America, because I can't tell you how many times I went to work and the first thing that comes out of a person's mouth, does Black people do this? Or or what kind of food? Or to my African American sister, when that white woman wants to come and touch your hair.
I got the hair thing. Every day somebody is trying to touch my hair. And it's infuriating because we've been here for hundreds and hundreds of years. We live side by side. So I call it deliberate ignorance. It's not that you don't know, you don't want to know, because you can't live next door to somebody and not know. I live next door to my neighbors. I live in a primarily African American Latino community, and I know what's happening in my community, even with my Latino neighbors. I know. We ask, but if I deliberately put blinders on and refuse to acknowledge, then of course I'm not going to know anything. But I don't like willful ignorance. And I don't think, I love our teachers. I strongly support our teachers. I don't know that it's willful ignorance on their part as much as exposure. They're 22, 23 years old. They're just fresh out of college.
And that's what I mean. They need a course in Black relations.
Yeah.
For lack of a term, to know that, even get a course in the slang that we use, because sometimes the slang that we use can be misconstrued.
Yeah.
And people think that, it's a real threat.
Well, the older we get, like we joke about this in our office, because sometimes we get information, we're trying to read it. We're like, what does this mean? I don't know what this word means, because we're older now. When I was in my 20s doing this, I got it. But now, in my 50s, I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about. I might have to call my daughter and be like, what does this mean? Because I just don't know. I'm not hip on the vernacular like I used to be. But at the end of the day, we get the calls because there's a lot of miscommunication surrounding what's going on in a family.
All right. So now, for those that don't know what child advocacy is, or they think they know, but they really don't have it quite together, how would you explain to someone who says, I hear the term, but what exactly is child advocacy?
So we are an adult-centered or an adult-focused system. So things happen to children. We treat children kind of like property. And so children often are overlooked until something bad happens. Even in child welfare, we're looking at parents. We'll take children out of a home and focus on the parents. So child advocacy is really being centered on what are the needs of the child. How do we make it right? Can we make this family whole again? If we can't make this family whole again, what's in the best interest of that child? Looking at even though there's an abuse, maybe there's something neglectful happen in their family. Their life doesn't stop. They still have to have education. They still have to have health care. They still need recreation. They need all of these things. So advocacy is trying to make sure that a child stays whole while they're in the middle of, let's put it, hell. You're trying to make sure that they understand that somebody is out there trying to give them all the things that they may be missing to the best of our ability. It's really hard, but child advocacy is focusing on the child, because a lot of times, people are like, and I hate to say it that way, we'll get families that come to us and they say, well, you didn't do this for mom and you didn't do this for dad. You're grown. So we can only do so much for you, but that child is 100% dependent upon us. So our focus is going to be them first, and then we'll try to bring everything else in. But that child is 100% dependent upon whoever is taking care of them, and then we have to bring in what we can do for the adults.
And I would suspect that in our communities, you face different scenarios than you would other communities. Like, let's say in the case of neglect, where you have, first of all, you might not have a two-parent home, and that one parent might have to work two jobs, and so they're out most of the time, and so either they're not spending enough time with Junior, or either Junior is a latchkey kid, which many of us, we were latchkey kids, and so somebody sees that, a teacher or somebody sees that, and they suspect neglect, because how can mom be there for Junior when she's working, 6 to 2, and then turn around, have to flip and do another job, and who's watching the kids without actually finding out from the family, okay, maybe there is somebody there watching the child, I just tend to think that we might, see different scenarios in different cultural households.
There are definitely, I apologize. There are definitely differences culturally. I will say this: there is more similarity than there is disparity in terms of what we see. So poverty is probably, I would say, the biggest factor in what we're seeing. But what do we see downstate? We see upstate too. I mean, it's kind of, it's surprising. Some people don't really, because we don't really go downstate a lot if you don't move through this state. But drugs was a big deal downstate. We had a period of time where crystal meth was like, it was really big. So drugs downstate. In the suburbs, we were seeing kids experimenting with, prescription drugs, heroin. We were seeing, most of our cases are not necessarily because there was inadequate supervision. A lot of our cases are dealing with drugs, or dealing with sexual abuse, or some form of abuse. I did see a decrease in the number of cases where who's watching Johnny, because we had to recognize that people do work. Kids can take care of themselves at younger ages. Some things are just like, you can't leave your kid home for the weekend while you go, kick it.
So Vegas.
Right. But a kid home from, say, 3:30 to 5:30, and you're 12 or they're 10, You have to look at every circumstance, see if that child was prepared. So we saw kind of a decrease in that. Um, we did see a rise in car cases where kids were left in the car while you just run in. Don't do that, people. Don't do that.
I can't. I can't even. I can't stress enough how upset it makes me. You hear on the news, like especially during the summertime,
Mm-hmm.
like every other day, a case where a parent went in, left their child in the car. I'm just going in for 5 minutes. Or 5 minutes too long when it's hot, and you don't leave the car on. There's no air. First of all, the child shouldn't be in there.
Mm-hmm.
But then with the rash of carjackings,
Right. It's a
and your
recipe
child
for
is in the
disaster. Yeah.
car, so
Yeah. It's a recipe for disaster. I mean, you just cannot take any chances anymore with that. I mean, it's I remember as a kid, I think we all probably have done this. I remember as a kid, my dad got out to pump gas and I decided to put the car in neutral. and the car started moving.
No, I didn't do
And
that.
you didn't do
I
that?
didn't do that. No,
Oh
no.
my
See,
gosh. Yeah.
I grew up on the west side. We didn't do that. You
Okay.
south side did stuff
Maybe,
like
yeah,
that.
maybe we did, but yeah, I definitely didn't do it again.
I know you
But
did.
kids are just, they're curious, but also they're vulnerable. But there's so many situations. So we saw a rise in that kind of inadequate supervision, but for the most part, we were dealing with. We saw a huge rise, and you know why we saw a huge rise? We saw a huge rise in mental illness, parents with mental illness who there were no resources for them, and so it impacted their ability to care for the kids, and just yeah, that was a huge jump for us. Um, just when you shut down mental health hospitals, mental health clinics, providers, where are you going to go for, so we saw a lot of that too.
Wow. And unfortunately, and we hear it all the time. There used to be a time we didn't hear mental illness associated with our people.
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't hear
Stigma.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's such a big thing that we can no longer ignore it.
Mm-mm.
We can't sweep it under a rug. Many times we see it in our family members and we refuse, well, we don't need any help. We don't believe in going to see psychologists or,
Yeah.
or any type of counseling. We handle it in house. One
Mm-hmm.
thing our culture has been, we're very private about what we do in our home.
Right.
And unfortunately, that can be detrimental
Yeah, very
to
much.
the children, to other family members. When we see a problem, we
Yeah.
should at least figure out how we can get some help.
Well, one of the things about working in this system that, well, the compassion you have to have, but understanding that a lot of times when you see people who are coming in, we call it dual diagnosis, where they're using narcotics and they're also mentally ill. They're self-medicating. So you kind of have to see they go hand in hand a lot of times. So um, just the lack of resources for people who are struggling with substance abuse and mental health is huge. It's a huge gap. And how do you come back from that and get your kids back or get your family whole? It's a tough situation.
I remember, and I know it's hard because I remember a young lady years ago. She was on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Her children were taken away, and one of the children was placed with a very prominent Chicago political family.
Mm.
And but she had gotten herself together and everything, and um, she believed she was successful in getting all of her children back except for that particular one.
That particular child grown now?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but I believe I can't. Yeah, I haven't talked to her in a while, but I believe she does have a relationship with that child.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that family has
She
gotten
does.
their
I
own
know
trouble.
exactly who you're
Yeah,
talking
so,
about. Mm-hmm.
but and she was a friend of our family,
Mm-hmm.
and so I understand how the journey or the path can be very long and tedious in restoration.
Yeah, I worked with her for a long time.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that is one of those situations. It's heartbreaking, but that's kind of where child advocacy that you mentioned that is where child advocacy sometimes diverges from what an adult needs or wants to do. Um, it's not always the case, but sometimes it's too late, and so we have to just focus on where we take the child next. Um, Sometimes parents get themselves together, but if a child has been in a home for 10 years and that's the only family that they've known, um, then you have to look at what do we do for this child? I know you got yourself together. I know you can do this now, but is it too late? Because you now will cause irreparable harm to this child by ripping them from another home. That's always a balancing act. There's no right or wrong answer for every family. It's different.
Mm-hmm.
And in my experience in all these years, kids want a connection to their biological families, unless
Mm-hmm.
it's something absolutely out the charts. But kids do want to know where they come from, just like anybody else.
Yeah, because I would imagine, and I've always thought this. I imagine that child is saying, okay, what about beyond my parents? What about grandparents, siblings, cousins?
Mm-hmm.
I could be going to school with cousins and don't even know it. And
Yeah.
I've known that to happen as well.
Yeah.
And so I've known it to happen where a child was going to school with a half brother because that parent got remarried, had children, and did not even know it.
Mm-hmm.
So but because that child was taken from that parent at an earlier stage in life, had no connection to the family.
Right.
Until later on, as they got older, they were able to reestablish. But
It's really, because I've been doing this so long, I'm not desensitized. It's just that I've heard everything.
right.
And so, the tears don't flow like they used to flow when I was in my 20s and 30s. Like, I can't believe this is happening. But I still have the empathy. But last year, I had one of my sorors asked me to come and work at their school has a career day. I went to the career day and I was on in my suit, I was being the lawyer and the judge, and they heard where I worked and everything else. It was one little girl, she was sitting there and she broke my heart. She was sitting there and she was watching me, and she came up to me. I thought she was going to ask me about, being a lawyer, being a judge and everything else. And she quietly stuck a note in my hand and she said, "Can you find my brother?"
Mm.
I was like, I was so taken aback. She said, "They took him and I don't know where he is." And she just rocked me for the rest of the day. I couldn't even, I was telling myself, like, I don't know what to do with it. I haven't had that happen in so long, but she was probably 10 or 11 years old. I'm sorry. The only thing on her mind, though, out of all these people that were there in that room, was, here is somebody that might be able to help me find my brother, my baby brother. And so I had her name stuck up on my wall for, like a year. And I was like, calling people like, "Yeah, find this boy," because it just, you forget that out of all the stuff you're doing and you get so busy and you're offering services and you're going to court, you forget that they just want to see their family, you know? And so that was a real wake up call for me again to be like, okay, what are you doing? How are you doing it?
All right, I want to give a shout out to these people that are watching in one person, who I call the Obi-Wan of the class of '85. But first of all, Sophie Lonzo, good to see you. Valencia, V. Tyson, the Obi-Wan of class of '85, Mario Baserto.
Mario Baserto. I knew it was Mario. Hey, Mario.
Says, "Did you bring your own lighting?" Good job.
I knew he was going to say something.
He said, "We were better behaved on the west side." Yeah. Angelique Stewart, God bless you. Denise Wilson, and Kimberly King Garrett. Good to see you.
Hi, Kimberly.
Mario says, "Very impressive. Run, Rhonda, run." All right. So, Phyllis Harrington Lovelace, good to see you. Thank you, all of you that are chiming in. If you have any questions for Rhonda, please feel free to type it in the comment field, or you can give us a call at 708-223-8953. 708-223-8953. See, Mario will be the one to call. But anyway, 708-223-8953. Now, if I was to ask you this, over the years, both as in the public guardian's office as well as what you're doing presently, what would you say would be your greatest victory?
Victory?
Or if that is, can you use that term? Your success story, your greatest success,
or something that stuck out to me that I was the proudest of, maybe. Because I'm very clear, and I say this, and my coworkers get so tired of me saying this, and I'm always like, remember, you don't really have a dog in this race or a horse in this show, because you go home at night. Um, and these families are the ones that really have the stake. Something that stood out. Um, yeah. So I worked a very high profile case. I was mad when I got stuck with this case. Um, and I mean, they wrote me up in the paper. They said, oh, they kept misquoting me in the paper. I was a super mad about this case, but I worked it for a number of years, and it was a lot of kids in this family. Um, Probably about eight kids in the family. But the first two kids who were on the cusp of graduating from high school and going to college, we worked really hard, and we found a school here in Illinois. Can't name them, can't give them a plug, but a college, a small college in Illinois, on the North Shore, who took a chance on those two kids. Um, and of those like eight kids, six of them went through that college
Mm,
debt free,
wow.
debt free. To watch six kids come out of what they came out of and go to college, and they made sure they brought their brothers and sisters up with them. It was I would say I had a little bit to do in that, but I always think about that. I'm like, if that family can do it, any of these families can do it. So I'm always reminded, like, don't underestimate these kids. They can do that. So that's probably the biggest success for me, is seeing them go through that, because they had a hard time, and seeing them go through that always reminds me that, um, advocate for education for those kids, because they're going to be self-sufficient one day, and education is probably the biggest thing to do with success when these kids come out of the system. So that's probably the one that sticks out for me the most.
Have you ever had anyone that you dealt with personally to come back many years later and say thank you, or
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
I
have.
thank you for everything that you've done for me?
Yeah. My first one, my very first one, and I still, wow, I feel old now. My very first
Who you are?
young lady, I am not. Just, well, excuse me. My very first young lady that did that, she also went away to college, but she used to keep me, and she's in her 30s now. I'm just like, wow. She used to keep me apprised of her life and everything like that, and she would send me cards, like Christmas cards every year, and things like that. And she sent me a mug and her graduation pictures and stuff like that, and I would keep them up on my wall, because it just reminded me. I'm like, they look up to you, um, when you're connected to them that way. They look up to you, and they count on you. And so when they come back and say thank you, you're just like, okay, maybe I don't know what I did, but maybe I did do something that made a difference. So yeah.
Awesome. Now, I have a question here, and I believe Mario's being very sincere. He says that, asked the question, "Are you considering running for office?" He said, "Because you'd be very great."
I hear this a lot. I don't know. The pros and cons of being in where we live. Running for office requires so much money and sacrifice. But at the same time, I feel like I do have a servant spirit. I always want to represent people. So it's one of those up in the air kind of things. What would I want to do? Everybody's like, "Oh, run for judge." I'm like, oh, that's really a race. It's something I'm considering, but I don't know where I would really throw my hat in, where I would fit the best.
I think you would do good as a judge. And we both have a mutual friend who just won a judge's seat a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Because we need people on the bench that have the heart
Mm-hmm.
for the people,
Yeah.
especially the children. And I believe that you would have the support that you need. So I mean, because my next question is, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
Um, I definitely still see myself working with the public in this sector. Um, I have dedicated my career. I never once thought of leaving public service and going into. I've been asked before. I've been asked to come to a firm. I've been asked to start a firm. Some friends wanted to get together and start their own boutique firm. It sounded really great. Like African American women, we were doing it. This was the height of when Girlfriends was a show. But I I didn't want to stop doing public service. I just didn't want to stop doing that. So I know I'll still be in this area to a certain extent. Um, I'll be old enough to retire in a couple of years. So I don't know. I might
Yeah.
be retired on the beach somewhere with, but um, in 5 years, I still think I would still be working. I still be working in the public sector. Will I be in an elected position? I don't. I really don't know.
Hmm. Okay.
What's that look on your face?
Anyway, I can be a campaign manager.
Oh my gosh.
Vote for Rhonda.
Oh my goodness.
Vania, Vanessa, Vonnie. Good to see you.
Hi.
Thank you for chiming in. Annette Harris. She says, "Hey, Elder Megan, you're a beautiful guest. Annette has a show here on Wednesday, Mind, Body, and Soul. It airs at 12 noon. Um, we just thank God because you have dedicated your life. Here you are. You went through law school, and whereas so many young lawyers have that dream of having their own or becoming a partner in a firm
Mhm.
or having their own firm,
Mhm.
you decided you wanted to work with the public.
Right.
And I'm sure they're saying, well, when they come out of law school, they're looking at, okay, if I work for a firm, I make X amount of dollars in so many years and this, that, and the other. And they look at the public sector. Well, I'll use the public sector to get my feet wet. But then my ultimate goal was to be with that firm.
Yeah.
Because money is not in the public side, on the public side, so not as much as the corporate side.
Right.
But here you are, your heart and your passion is towards the public, your heart and your passion is towards the children.
Yeah.
And I believe partly it's because of your own children. You
Yeah.
have children that you care for, and I believe that when you have children and you wonder, you put yourself in that situation. How would I feel if I'm in this situation? I have no
Right.
one to go to bat for me.
Right.
You know.
So it's kind of one of those things. I love kids. I absolutely love kids. I really, strangely enough, because I ended up with like a caseload of all teenagers. I love teenagers. I know a lot of people don't like teenagers because they can be challenging. Don't get me
I used to
wrong.
teach teenagers. So
I
trust me.
know, but it's something about that age where they're right on they really need you the most then. When they're right on that edge of becoming an adult, you can watch them become the person they're going to be. But also impacting them, it's tough. It's really, really tough. But that's when you can sit down and have those heart to hearts and those conversations with them. When you're talking to a 5-year-old, you're kind of talking at them. They say stuff to you like, yeah, what you talking about? But when you get a 13, 14-year-old, they have something to say. The gifts are starting to become, visible. And then you can have these conversations with them. A lot of people, I can't say a lot of people, but I've worked with people who just don't know how to talk to teenagers. They don't know how to have those conversations with them. They don't know how to meet them where they are,
Right.
And so, it's not even about knowing slang. They know what you're talking about, So I made it my niche to be able to talk to young people and meet them where they are. And so that is always something that I know that I will probably work with. I'll always work with that demographic of our community. They are very vulnerable. One misstep, and they can be in the adult system very quickly. So, but yeah, just being able to work with that group, probably like from 12 to 19, I love them.
Awesome. Amina McNeil, good to see you. Vania says she thought you were already a judge.
I'm an administrative law judge, so it's different. So I am a judge for an agency. So I handle the cases for that particular agency. Uh, I can't handle cases for other agencies. So I'm doing administrative law. So I don't sit on the circuit court bench where you have the possibility of sending people to jail, or civil law where you're dealing with, money or rights. Um, so, but I will say this: where I work as an administrative law judge, I don't know anyone else who has it tougher than the administrative law judges in my agency, because, you'll have people who have been denied benefits. That is important. You have people who, their license have been revoked. That's important too. But then I'll have someone come in front of me and I have to decide for my agency if this person is a sex offender, if this person has, hurt this child. And so one of the what really hit home to me about how difficult it is for our judges was there was the potential for a pool of judges to happen a couple of years ago. That's what Rhonda wanted to do, make us all like a pool. And the judges from the other agencies were like, we don't want to work over here. We don't want to do those cases. And because they're difficult.
Awesome. Candace Clark says very true. You have to meet teens where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, like I said, I taught teenagers, 9th through 12th. And they're a different breed. And you have to know where their minds are.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't, use blanket statements and blanket generalizations with them. You have to understand that their minds and their bodies are going to transition. They're going from teenage years into early adult, lives. And so you have to be there and to meet them to help escort them to where they need to be.
Where my office is, there are 2 high schools in our building. One is a charter school and the other one is, I hate to use alternative school, but it's a school kids that need to finish, that may have left another school. And so when I come in the morning, they're out there. And when I come out at lunch, they're leaving. And I have conversations with them. I talk to them. I go, what's going on? How's school going? Because they are hilarious, but also, they're just standing there. No one is really talking to them, and I'm like, what? They have stuff to say. So I have picked up a lot of things from these kids over the last 2-3 years that I've been at that office. Just talking to them and listening to them and watching them. They can be wrong. They can be raunchy. But I still enjoy watching them try to, become adults.
Cool. Well, thank God for you taking the time out to be with us on today. I'm going to bring you back. I probably have to wait another 6 months, but I'll bring you back.
Yeah.
It's been about 6 months that I tried to get you back anyway. But we just thank God for you being able to give some of your time to little old me, and I thank God for you. Those of you that's watching, those of you that's listening, feel free to stop by the Victory Temple Church of God in Christ any Sunday morning from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. We're located at 2000 West Roosevelt Road inside of the Community Presbyterian Church building. And tune in every Saturday at 12 noon for Connections right here on IntellectualRadio.com. See you next week.